Hey guys, welcome back to Seller Sessions. The boy wonder is back in town. Liran Hirschkorn, fresh from having a new addition to the family. I think
Yes.
your child was born only a few days after we last chatted, wasn't it?
Yes. It's 2 months. 2 months old now.
Excellent. And getting much sleep.
Yeah, he's starting to sleep through the night, so it's nice. Yes.
Excellent. Cool. All right. So today we're going to be talking about, well, we're going to talk about exiting, but being prepared for exit, but the problems that people are facing as more and more, mainly aggregators, but now even with brokerages and stuff, they're raising the bar of what deal flow that they're going to be looking at. So do you want to kick off with the background on this?
Yes. So the background is that I think things are changing in the world in the number of ways, not just from the aggregator's point of view, but potentially the economy, inflation, the U.S. I think if there's another sort of negative quarter, we'll officially be in a recession. So I think capital in general is not as free flowing as it was, a year or two ago, or for the last several years. And as a result, you're going to see, you're seeing buyers of brands be more cautious. I also do hear the rumors and news about certain aggregators not performing as well. I still think there are aggregators that are performing very well. I'm hearing both sides of it, but we're hearing certain names not perform as well. At least those are the rumors. I don't have any sort of inside knowledge that somebody else doesn't have, but in fairness, I think it's challenging times that the aggregators started these businesses, bought them, and then they're hit with supply chain issues, inflation,
Material costs.
COVID bump, material costs, COVID bumps, and then the down of certain niches after people buying as much arts and crafts or toys or certain products that they could buy, sports, fitness at home products, etc., that they could buy during the pandemic that may be down. And so this isn't just an attack against aggregators. I think we're just in difficult times, and now you have war on top of that, and inflation, and a lot of things going a lot of uncertainty, I would say, going on in the world.
Yeah.
And as a result, what I see is started to see this, I think, last year, as some of the aggregators that would initially buy a business that had 200,000, 300,000 EBITDA, that was maybe $1 million revenue business, are now saying, no, we're not buying those kind of businesses anymore. We want to buy a brand that has $1 million EBITDA. And now I see certain brands. I saw Elevate Brands on a LinkedIn post recently share, we're buying brands with 2 million plus EBITDA. Okay, so to be a 2 million plus profit, you would assume a business has to be at $6-7 million in top
At least.
line.
Yeah, because there's obviously, as you scale, the margins tend to go down because some people doing
Correct.
8 figures are working off a 10% margin, 12%
Right.
margin.
Right. So if you're at 10 million and you're 10% margin, then you're not even at $1 million EBITDA with a $10 million business. If you have a very, very strong business, and maybe 7 million, 6-7 million, maybe you're there at 2 million. But like you said, probably not, because you need to hire more people and in order to scale that, and as a result, you might have less margins. So that means that, in my opinion, what we'll likely start to see, and maybe is already happening in the market, is that the multiples will continue to stay and maybe even increase on the businesses that now are considered, maybe have more competition. There's also less of them that have that $1 million plus, 2 million plus EBITDA, and maybe the multiples there will stay the same or even go up, right? Those 6, 7, 8x multiples that we've kind of heard of, but that there's probably less buyers interested in your $1 million revenue business that does $200,000 a year in EBITDA. And for those that were able to exit last year with that, well, you got combination of good timing, luck, and some good decision making. And if you got a 5x on that or 4 or 5x on that, I think it's going to be much harder to do that, unless you have some unique things going for you, like maybe you have significant sales off Amazon, you have maybe a great social following, you have maybe a patent on your product, right? Like You have something more than just a private label brand that's selling $1 million a year on Amazon. As a result, I think that, you know, you now have to, you now have to raise the bar in terms of, if you want to get a great exit, I think you have to raise the bar in terms of increasing your top line goals or having bigger goals before you exit the brand.
Yeah.
Or you can exit probably, and you could probably, you know, I still think there will be buyers, but again, you might get a 2.5 or 3x as opposed to that 4 to 5x that maybe you're able to get when last year for the business. So
well, it was at one point it went up to 7 and 8x, and that's starting to come down. So it's almost returning back to the 4x was about there and thereabouts a couple of years ago. Because obviously the guys have raised, most of these people have done the key raising pre-COVID. So they must have had a torrid time as they've grown. And like you said, logistics are in the toilet, the war stuff that's going on, the misjudgment on the COVID bump. It will be tough times for some of those people out there. And the other thing is as well, is that when you think, let's just say there's 60,000, I can't remember something Buzz, but they've done the statistics on it. Let's say there's 60,000 sellers doing 1 million plus, right, on the platform. Out of those, how many of them are underwater? You know, because they're struggling themselves, they're breaking even, etc., as they've been hit with the rising costs, etc. Then you add in the fact that there's always the cream rises to the top. So if you rush out and buy all the cream at the top of search, what you're left with, the next run of entrepreneurs that may be not as good as those guys, but then guys are now competing not against the competition, but competing against aggregators with even more money. So there needs to be a new flow of businesses coming through that becomes the cream. And then what happens is people then buy from tier 1 gets cleared out, then you go down to tier 2 and then tier 3. So some people have been lucky, and I don't like to put them there, but they're tier 2 and tier 3 companies. I've seen some real smash and grabs. Some of these things that have been bought is like, where were these people when they were at the negotiating table? You know, like the sellers are running off laughing when they've sold.
Right.
But I think that's where that's kind of had a clear out. And then you've seen in Vegas, no aggregator parties. They co-sponsored on stuff. So no lavish fireworks displays for 700 grand and, well, not that much, but it was excessive, wasn't it, the year before? And you see that the advertising dollar will start to dry up as well. There'll be a lesser events and stuff. But I still think that there's a place for that top 10. They'll clean up. But I'm a bit concerned about the next 80 or 90 sitting under them, which will be the real struggle.
You're already starting to see one aggregator buying another happen recently. Berlin Group bought Factor 14, I think was recent, and you'll probably see more of that. The aggregator selling their portfolio off to another aggregator. So I think you'll see a lot more consolidation, and by next year, 50% maybe of those aggregators won't be around. And the truth is, probably a lot of people haven't even heard of some of these names. You and I hear them more, but there's aggregators out there. There was an aggregator out there that I heard about last week. I never heard of them before. And I feel like if you and I haven't heard of some of these names, then
between us, and a few others,
sellers, sort of the sellers that are not kind of watching the news around it every day are.
Well, you see the movement at the agency, so do I. Your agency's larger than mine, but I'm sure you see a lot of action going on there. And we're always speaking to our clients all the time.
Yep.
I encourage them to exit. I want to see them do well, and generally they'll come back after 18 months. If they're happy with the work, they'll come again. But it's definitely interesting times. But I always stood by it. Is that it's been fantastic having them in the market to have this push. So the mindset of a seller is that you got a place to exit. In 2015, it was like, let's build $1 million business. That was relatively easy comparison to now. No $1 million business is easy to build.
Right.
But when you think it was like open season on Amazon 2015, 16 and 17, and the moat started to build around it. But there wasn't really anywhere to go. Because yes, you could exit, but it wasn't a trend and it wasn't all these aggregators and everything. So I think it's been wonderful for Amazon sellers to have that opportunity that normally happens in Silicon Valley or something,
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, except sellers who sold last year, like you said, they, I think, had a great opportunity to exit the business. And yeah, I think some of those businesses, should they have really been bought?
No,
Probably
definitely
not.
not. Definitely not. I've
You
seen
know,
some shocking ones. Yeah.
yeah, and I've seen it too. We've seen, we had a client that sold to an aggregator. Aggregator decided to take the brand back, in house. We were managing the ads. Recently, they came back to us and they said, "Hey, can you run the ads for it again?" We were about to start taking it over, and then they said, "Pause everything. We are rebranding." Right, and the seller that sold is messaging me, and they're like, I'm so angry. They're like, I could sue them for my earnout,
Yeah.
because they're like pausing all the ads. They're deciding to rebrand. Like, what the heck are they doing with, they're killing my brand.
Mm.
This seller had a good experience. They got enough money up front. They were happy with it. So like anything else that happened was going to be just a bonus for them as far as the earnout.
Yeah.
But like, they're not happy seeing the aggregator that bought the brand is literally killed the brand. I also see another trend that I see is that some of more of the aggregators, or some more I see, are wanting the founder to stay on.
Yeah. That's a good sign.
And there's pros and cons to that, right? Like, a lot of founders want to go and start a new brand, do something different. They don't necessarily want to stay on. And I think others may not mind, right, to exit and stay on, but that's something you might need to consider again as more of the aggregators figure out, like, well, we're really good at like finance and supply chain and certain things, but we don't really know the Amazon side well, and we should have done this from the beginning.
Yeah.
And I think that was kind of a mistake on a lot of the aggregator side, that they really should have had more Amazon sellers instead of hiring, brand manager for some big, CPG firm that sells, $1 billion a year, instead of hiring like an Amazon seller who was on the platform. But all that being said, I think sellers are going to need to think about scaling beyond, 7 figures in order to have a really great, meaningful exit, is kind of just my opinion. So
what about those on the cusp? You got some strategies there, haven't you? Because taking it to the next level, growing it past the thought that where you originally thought you were able to sell, because like the goalposts have been moved slightly.
Yeah.
What can we cover here from your opinion?
Yeah.
Some of the things people can do to get to that next level, that jump.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think if your goal is to go from 3 or 4 million in revenue to 10 million, then one, you're no longer in a position where you could do everything yourself. So you need to make sure you have really great systems and processes, and that you're able to start thinking about hiring. So I think that's kind of a shift for a lot of people who are used to doing everything themselves, is hiring, and maybe hiring beyond just, just VAs, right?
Yeah.
Like you might need to bring on somebody who is, stronger or more strategic than, let's say, what you're going to hire in just a VA. I think perhaps outsourcing more to the right things, whether it's PPC or something else. Perhaps you might need to look at funding options, to grow the business, launch more products, grow the business. But you have to start kind of thinking about, how can I replace myself in the business and make sure I have systems and processes that other people could come in and implement, so I can grow beyond just what I'm doing myself. And if you're really good at one area of the business, you should focus on that, and you should hire out for build a team to do the thing. So if you're amazing at product development, like I know a lot of sellers that are great at product development, but they're not necessarily good at PPC, or they're not good, or they hate logistics or operations. I could speak personally, like when, I would say, when I was focused on launching and building products, like product development was one of my favorite things to do, but operations was not necessarily.
Yeah.
So I think you need to go a lot more granular, in your business, or again, hire the right people who can go a lot more granular in your business. I was just on a call with a seller, a brand before this, and I was looking at some searches around their products and brand name, and they're basically running one type of sponsored brand ad, a store spotlight ad, for every possible search term around their product. They're running the same store spotlight ad. You can't really do that anymore. You need to go a lot more granular, where the keywords that you're targeting match the copy that you're targeting, that are very specific to the ad type that you're running, whether that's a sponsor brand spotlight to your storefront, or whether that's a custom image beta, taking advantage of that, or whether it's focused very, very specific on products. So like, I think you have to go a lot more granular in every aspect of the business, and hire and build out teams that can really help you scale the business beyond just you. And again, whether that means outsourcing more, hiring for more things in the business, or internally or externally. And again, considering whether or not you might need any sort of outside capital to grow. Because I think it's a consideration for a lot of people. They reach a point where they say, look, I can only take this business so far. I took this business to $4 million. I don't think I can take it anymore. I don't want to go I don't want to necessarily go, and like the next option for me might be to take it to Europe, and I don't want to go do that because of all the headaches. So instead, you might need to go and think about who can I hire that can help me do that, because they reach a point where I'm either going to sell or I'm just going to grow the business a lot more, but I don't know that I could do it on my own anymore. And I think it's also a mindset thing, a limitation that people have in their heads, right? You got your business to a certain point. You don't think you could take it beyond that point, but maybe hiring the right person on your team could make all the difference. Or maybe even bringing on some stakeholder, right? Like equity partner, or some aspect of working on the business differently than you did before in order to scale it. Because I think a lot of sellers who sold at $1 million of revenue, or $2 million of revenue, sold because they kind of felt like that was their max, that they could hit. But I don't think those options are going to be as good going forward. And you should really think about, like, raise your goals from, $1 million.
How do you see the funding market at the moment? What are you seeing out there in the trends? Because I know that you do stuff with 8fig, don't you?
Yes. Yeah.
It's not an area that I'm really knowledgeable on. I don't raise funding, but I think it's important. But it goes back to the point of even today, and I say this respectfully, a lot of people still don't know their numbers. They think they've got a grip on them, and quite often they haven't. And it can be quite complex when you've got inventory turns all the time, like with logistics. And if your material costs are going up, that can disappear overnight if you're not careful, and if you're not planning your cash flow properly.
Yeah, it's funny you mention that, because I saw a post. I was just kind of looking for it, but I saw a post in the FBA High Rollers group or something, and somebody kind of wrote, like, 65% of sellers think they're making money, actually don't really know their numbers, or something. So I agree. I think a lot of sellers don't know their numbers. As far as like funding, I don't really, at this point, I don't see like a slowdown in terms of funding for sellers. I think there's money still available as long as you have a good business, profitable products. You can get funding for your products. So I haven't seen changes there. And I think, like with 8fig, you're kind of forced to know your numbers, because you're asked to fill out like your cost of goods and your margins, and like create like lines where you will know your numbers by the time you're done going through the process, because they need to understand what your numbers are and what your margins are, and if your numbers still work with the additional cost of funding. That's important. So I think it's really important. And look, one of those initial things that if you don't have in your business is hiring like a full-time bookkeeper, somebody who does your financials, who can show you all your metrics very well. In my business,
or even a part-time CFO. So you've got your accountant that does your taxes, VAT in the UK or Europe. But then if you've got people doing your taxes, all that legislation stuff is done, you do your year end and everything else, then you've got a bookkeeper. Then you've got maybe some guys in the Philippines doing under the bookkeeper, doing reconciliation and stuff. But you could have a CFO that works with you for a handful of hours a week.
Yes.
$25, $30 an hour for 3 or 4 hours a week, just overseeing things, and doing reporting can make a massive difference.
Yes. And I mean, even In my agency business, we have a full-time, bookkeeper, and she's, I mean, in the Philippines, and I mean, she's higher. I think she's $12 an hour, so
Yeah.
it's not, $5 or $6 an hour. So she's very good, and we know our numbers really, really well because we get a really good view and an understanding of what's happening with the business and the numbers, and we helps us make decisions in the business around it. And I think with your Amazon business, you not only need to understand your top line numbers, but you need to go into every single ASIN SKU and
Mm.
understand what their underlying numbers are, and like, are you actually making money with this SKU, and what is it? What's the product? What's the opportunity cost if you were to launch a different product as opposed to this, to this one. So I think really, like, I guess to sum it up, you need to reevaluate like your systems, processes, team, capital, and for as long as I've been involved in Amazon since 2014, the most successful sellers who have scaled their businesses the most are launching new products on a regular basis. That seems
Yeah.
to be the
Yeah.
lifeblood of growth, because some products do end up having a certain shelf life of 2, 3 years, 4 years, maybe. Some go further and
Yeah.
stay longer, but some products do have a shelf life where there's more competition that comes in, the price starts to get reduced. And if you didn't build up to be one of the review leaders, then you're in a difficult spot. If you did, you could be in a very strong spot. But the lifeblood of successful brands have been launching new products,
Yeah.
and I think that's something sellers need to continue to do on an ongoing basis.
Completely agree. Is there anything else you want to say before we go? Anything you want to cover?
No, I wouldn't say specifically. I would just say that I think people will need to also watch their spending, and um, I would say maybe take a somewhat conservative approach, because if the economy is going to get hit, maybe something that you as a seller have not seen or experienced, and that's kind of some of the talk out there about, again, at least in the US market, the rising inflation, war. Who knows what else will happen with that war going into the rest of the year, and how it's going to affect the economy. And so um, make sure your business can sustain throughout challenges. And um, I would say, yeah, make sure you're on top of your numbers, and having a healthy profit in the business to potentially sustain maybe bad times.
Yeah.
Again, this is not. I don't want this to be bleak.
No,
But
we're being, it's not about being bleak, it's about being realistic. Going back to the numbers point, when I say, you've got a lot of sellers don't know their numbers. Often the case is that their numbers are out of date, their cogs and everything are out of date by, 8 months to 12, 14 months. And that's where it kind of slips. So at the very beginning, say you're launching the product and everything, you're putting in your launch costs and stuff like that. And then things change over time, overheads increase, and it's not all being included in the overview of the business. And so they've got the original numbers without the increasing, but you do that across every SKU. That can make a very impactful hit on your business, especially if you're working to a target. You're looking at your tagos to get a target ACOS, for instance. Like,
right,
we have margin sheets that we send out, and like some of them enjoy the exercise of going, oh, I missed that, I need to update that there, and it helps them get correlated with that. So quite often it's the numbers are out of date more so than they completely don't know the numbers.
yeah, definitely. And understanding that would allow you to know you should kill a product, not kill a product. Um, what's again, like I said, that what's the opportunity cost of
Mm.
keeping a product or dumping it. And it's important that you understand that. One of the, I think, best investments for us has been having again, you may not need full time, but having somebody who is on top of the
Yeah.
numbers and metrics in the business, whether it's you or somebody else. um, and knowing that, I think at the same time, there's probably just a few key metrics that you need to stay on top of. And if you're tracking 20 metrics a week, it's also not good, because
Mhm.
there's always going to be ups and downs on something. Should be some key things you're focused on, like your overall profit, that week, your overall profit per product, your tacos, a few key things that you're looking at. And then it's also important for you to understand the market. One of our clients is in the musical instruments niche. And what they were saying is that they're seeing, and they sell B2B, and they sell online and other methods. And what they were saying is, we're seeing, for example, products under $500 selling better, again, because potentially inflation and other things. So we're seeing better sales on those than we've seen historically. Like, we think there's going to be more of a shift there. We're also seeing accessories selling much better, because if you're a musician, you may not buy a new guitar, but if your case broke, you're going to need to buy a new case, or right, like you're going to need new picks. You're going to need those things, but you don't necessarily need a new guitar. So like, they're going to be focused more on accessories and sub $500 products because of what they're seeing happen within their niche. So understanding your niche and the consumer behavior within the niche, I think is important.
Yeah, indeed. Cool. Let's leave that there. Best way people can reach you.
Sure. Incrementumdigital.com is the website, or they can follow me on all the social channels, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram. We started a newsletter on Instagram as well under Incrementum Digital. And if you subscribe, it also sends you email notifications when we put that out.
Sounds good. Liran, thank you for joining us today, guys. Thank you for joining us. If this is your first time, don't forget to hit the subscribe button. I'll be back here tomorrow. Take care of yourself and your family. Much love, and I'll see you again soon.